Allison, it's great to see you.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you again.
Hi, good afternoon, Claudia. I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh. Nice to meet you.
I'm Allison.
No, Allison.
Josh, dude, it's great to meet you. I checked out your site ahead of this interview, and dude, I love your take on movies. I subscribe to your newsletter.
Really?
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So nice to meet you too.
yeah, I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Obviously, we both really I love my dad. We first caught the film at South by Southwest. Yeah, it's stuck with us ever since. So we were really thrilled to be able to talk to you for a little bit.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you guys.
So for those who may not know, the film was inspired by your personal experiences with your own father. What was the extent of the scenario in real life? And did you find catharsis in exploring it in cinematic form? I'm assuming it never went as far as those meetups in person.
When I was 19 or 20, my dad and I got in a big fight. I decided to cut him out of my life. I blocked him on social media, changed his name in my phone to do not answer. And, I was going through a tough time, and he was really worried about me, but I wouldn't talk with him about any of it. I got home one day, and this really pretty girl sent me a friend request online, and I was very excited. She had all these amazing pictures, all the same interests as me. And it turned out to be my dad, and my dad had catfished me. And that was the foundation of the story.
How long did this real life catfishing go on in comparison to the movie version?
Longer than I wish it had.
Oh, wow.
Was the person like a real person in real life, or was it kind of just a fake person completely?
I'm not quite sure, to be honest. In the movie, it's a waitress named Becca that Chuck meets and emulates her entire online profile, and then has to kind of figure out how to, figure things out with the material he has.
So we both felt that the movie worked best when it approaches the weirdness of the premise through like dark comedy and uncomfortably hilarious moments. Did you have any primary cringe comedy inspirations when you were crafting the script for the film?
Yeah, so many, man. I grew up watching a lot of Sacha Baron Cohen's work, like the Ali G Show and Borat and whatnot. And then I was a big fan of like The Office and these kind of just discomfort-driven comedies. But then also there are a lot of filmmakers who really specialize in this like moral collision situation. There's an Iranian filmmaker named Asghar Farhadi whose work often orients around a moral quandary where there's really no right answer. Ruben Ostlund's work is often dealing with this hypertension of social discomfort. Michael Haneke's work, he really has this kind of formalistic, like brutal, he thrives on creating and generating that tension. I feel like my taste is a collision of a lot of these things. And then I just kind of think like what makes me the most uncomfortable, and then try to make it as emotionally grounded as I possibly can.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely an uncomfortable movie, but in the best way possible. I screamed at so many points of this happening. So
what made you decide to move into acting, and more specifically, what drew you to this darkly comedic project?
Yeah, I started acting back in 2016, but I was starting out with just smaller kind of digital roles, and from there was just kind of waiting for the right project to hit and making sure to train and coach and all those things. I think coming from a digital background, I have this deep awareness of really wanting to respect and do the work and just sort of wait for the right thing to happen at the right time. And in so many ways, I Love My Dad really felt that way because it was so fun to play Becca and play two versions of this character, real and fake. And it just allowed for me to get super dynamic and really dig deep into sort of like all of the psychological stuff that imaginary Becca contained. So it was very fun.
So which one did you have more fun with?
Okay, you know what? My first answer is imaginary Becca because she got to do so many cool things physically, whether that's walking on water, stepping out of a freezer, things that, as a little kid, that is what you imagine making a movie might be like, is doing these things that you don't do in your normal day-to-day life. But I will say the scene at the end where Franklin meets the real Becca and the awkwardness and that, I think that scene we got to improv a bunch, which really let us play into just like the uncomfortability. So I think that scene was just way too fun. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. That was chaotic.
I know.
So in Saturday's Q&A, you talked about your dad seeing the movie for the first time at South by Southwest. What was his opinion on the film? Did your relationship improve as a result of channeling a bizarre memory through the filter of filmmaking?
My dad loved the movie. I grew up watching a lot of movies with my dad. I would go to the movies every weekend with him. And so that's definitely, movies are a big part of our relationship. And so he was able to appreciate the movie kind of standalone from its subject being based on something that happened with us. Yeah, he's somebody that really, he doesn't care what other people think of him. And so he's able to kind of laugh at himself and have a sense of humor of the whole thing.
You kind of have to be able to laugh at yourself, especially in a situation this kind of off the wall. This scene where Becca and Franklin are dancing down the street, I love that part. That's one of my favorite parts. What was your favorite sort of fantasy sequence to film for the catfishing relationship?
It was honestly that scene. If you were asking younger Claudia what shooting a movie would be like, I would imagine that it's just that experience, which is kind of like la-da-da-dying down the street and having like, a car holding the camera, going backwards and tracking with you guys. I think that scene was definitely the most kind of pinch me moment because it feels like, I don't know, I feel like I've seen that in so many other films, is the dancing down the street montage of it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Did you guys film all of that stuff? Like were you on set when James filmed it by himself as well? Did you do it like subsequently, right, one after the other?
Yeah. So for many of the montage scenes, whether it was watching a movie or the dancing, Patton and I were just on standby, kind of swooping in, which was hilarious because
Awesome.
because my montage scenes with James, we're filming a rom-com. That was truly my experience with this film. And then having to watch Patton make out, hold the hand, like do everything that I had just done. And oh my gosh, we had to hold back so many laughs because it was very satisfying to do it and then get to watch that happen and unfold in real life.
I love the scene where Franklin and Becca kiss for the first time, and then Chuck has to imagine kissing his son. And then we go back to Franklin and Becca kissing, and it's this even more heightened and euphoric for Franklin. And this movie for me was all about that juxtaposition between Franklin's highs being Chuck's lows, and seeing vice versa and having go between those two polarities throughout the story.
So you inject so much passion and life into Chuck's text messages. Was that all on the page? And since you mentioned improv, how much improv was there in the movie overall?
So I think because this movie dances on such a fine line of what is crossing the line and what is just barely, all of the imaginary Becca scenes were not improvised because we really wanted to make sure we were nailing certain moments and certain lines, because I did go back and forth on what line essentially am I really allowing Chuck to kind of come out, and which lines I'm playing into the idea of this imaginary girl that Franklin is, sort of manifesting into thin air. For that, it was getting to be really precise and really intentional about the way that she moves and goes about kind of like her environment. And that was what was so fun about Becca, was just giving her this levity and sort of sense of freedom, because she's new to this world and she's just oogling at Franklin the whole time because she wouldn't be there without him. So kind of giving her this sort of childlike consciousness was also really fun to play with.
That definitely really comes through, like the childish. I never thought of it like that, but that's exactly like the perfect description. I love that.
Yeah.
So you talked about the scene where your character is walking on water and suddenly she sinks as she's breaking up with Franklin. It's so cool visually. I love that scene. How was it filmed? Did you use a stunt double?
No stunt doubles. That scene was challenging, I will say. I was walking on a plexiglass table that was weighed down with sandbags. And because the pool kind of curves at the bottom, it wasn't right up to the edge. So there was about like a foot of open space.
Oh my God.
The pool and the table. the first take, I slip stepping on the table, which at that point just puts the body into like total anxious, you're just on nerves for the rest of it. And so it was very slippery and very wobbly, but I totally agree. I think it was so worth shooting because it made for such a centerpiece for the film in terms of stunts and the jumping. I mean, that day it also rained. I think it thunderstormed too. So there were a lot of elements that were working against us. And one of them is just like being water and having to jump in the pool and then immediately reset, blow dry the hair. We've got multiple.
Oh my God, yeah.
It was very chaotic, but I'm so glad it worked out.
I didn't even think about that part. I can't imagine like the makeup artist having to redo it 8,000 times every time we fall in the water and have to do another take.
I know. At first we were starting to curl her hair and we were like, what are we doing? No. We cannot have to dry and curl and reset every single time. Well, yeah, it was a lot.
How did you find the right balance between the serious nature of suicide and cringe comedy? And why did you decide to approach it as more of a comedy versus a drama?
I'm somebody that struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life. And I think that's why I'm so attracted comedy is because like I don't know what else to do. I have to laugh at my life, otherwise I'll go crazy and be depressed. And so I feel like I've used humor and comedy as a way of just like making my life bearable at certain moments. And so I kind of see this film from a similar angle where it's like if it was a drama, I think it would just be like a hat on a hat. I mean, you have to laugh at it.
I feel like any given situation, it's either you laugh or you cry. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
but if
I
you
guess
can
with this movie, I was aiming for both sometimes.
Okay.
yeah, I think it does. It skirts between like the dark comedy, the drama, and then the really funny stuff. When do you think Chuck truly took things too far with stringing Franklin along? Was it the virtual kiss, the phone call?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think the initial idea is probably too far. And then everything after that is just the fallout from it. But too far is really in the eye of the person saying too far, So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the question that this movie poses is it okay to do the wrong thing for the right reasons? I think the answer to that question really depends on who you ask and how important the right reason actually is. And if it's a matter of like potentially saving someone's life, I don't know. If you asked me, would you catfish your son if that's the only thing you could do to save their life? I'd probably do it.
I can definitely see that. I mean, obviously, when it got to the point of being too far, that's probably not something I would do, but definitely the initial idea was a great idea. So did you always have Patton in mind to play your dad? Did you feel he captured the vibe and real mannerisms of your dad?
I mean, Patton is a comedic genius. He is able to inject so much levity even into the darkest material, and he just has tremendous heart in everything he does. And so he was able to make things funny and dark simultaneously, and he's done that throughout his career. And so I knew that he was going to be really the perfect fit for this role, and I think he exceeded my expectations tenfold on his execution and performance.
He was amazing. I mean, you were all amazing in this film. So James mentioned at the Q&A in New York at Rooftop Films that you spent a lot of time to mirror Patton's body language for cuts. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how it worked?
Yeah, during the rehearsal process, while we were rehearsing the scenes in the diner and just kind of exploring what differences we want to set between Becca and Chuck, because we did really want to confuse the viewers and pull at their heartstrings, because you're sort of rooting for this cute young adult couple, but also every 4 seconds you're reminded that it's actually his dad. And so we did play around with certain mannerisms, whether it's like touching the chin, or I think a lot of that also played into editing. There are certain moments within the film where our positioning or our limbs are sort of like in similar spots. So I want to give James credit on that, because it was so much about just catching those little tiny moments. But for the most part, we really wanted just the difference of, a girl falling in love and a dad that's just like shouting and screaming in cringe agony as he's catfishing his son.
I have a general question for you guys. So this is your first feature, correct? From what you said?
I've done work in the past, but this very much feels like the biggest, most exciting kind of traditional release of a film. So in many ways, it does feel like a fresh start or something.
So it's like your dream role now
Yeah.
that you have such a big thing. And I'm saying, like, what's your next dream role? I mean,
Oh gosh. Oh my God, I haven't even
like,
thought
who
that
would you
through.
love to work with? Who would be your dream co-star?
Dream co-star? Oh my gosh. I mean, my high school crush was always Ashton Kutcher. The age difference is pretty large right now, but I'd love to play within his vicinity. Director wise, I've always loved Mike Mills' work. His films just like capture life in such a kind of intimate slice of life perspective, and I love those sorts of films. We're filming all the self-tapes, we're doing everything we need to do, and I think when the right thing comes, it'll come, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what you do after this film, because I followed you on social media for a while just because of I have Billie Eilish and Phineas, and obviously, so I was excited to see you were casted, and I like knew I had to see this movie, and you were amazing, and I loved it. I loved everybody in this movie. Is one of my favorites of the year. So,
Oh, that means so much. Thank you.
yeah, sure.
She put this movie on my radar, so I have to give her some credit. South by Southwest, it's just so many movies, so you never know, what's going to be good, what's going to be worth watching. But this was one of my absolute favorites for sure.
It's definitely different. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not your typical festival kind of movie, I love that in the end, the message is ultimately one of positivity, forgiveness, and the love between a father and son. What do you hope are the biggest takeaways for the audience?
First off, I just hope audiences have a great time watching this in a theater. And if not in a theater, then in their living room with a bunch of friends, because it's one that I think is heightened by having other people around to view it with you. Some of the most meaningful interactions I've had around this film have been people coming up to me and saying things like, I haven't talked to my dad in 5 years. I'm going to call him this afternoon. And so I hope it makes audiences feel more inclined to reconsider the walls they've put up in their own life. And maybe those walls are necessary, but maybe there are cases where there's a way they can work things out.
And I do say that in person, it was a completely different experience than just watching the screener at home at like 1 a.m. during a festival. I was so glad that I went in person and see it again. So
it's great to have you there.
It was
Yeah,
so
I wish I would have been able to see that in a theater, honestly. It seems like that kind of a, high energy vibe.
So we always close out with this one. Do you have any current or upcoming projects that you'd like to plug?
Gosh, I don't have any that are out or can be talked about at the moment. I guess recently I was asked to direct Phineas's newest song called Mona Lisa. So I filmed, edited, directed the whole music video, and that was really fun because making YouTube videos for so long, I really appreciate being on the other side and getting so hands-on with the editing process and everything leading up to filming and then post-production. So I hope to do more of that as well. And that was such a great honor and so fun to do for him. So
that is so cool.
I have a couple movies I've written that I'm really passionate about. One of them I have partners on, one of them I'm looking for the right partners. And I want to keep telling stories that really push boundaries and that use techniques that haven't been used before and are potentially risky stories to tell. I'm looking at projects right now from as a writer, some as a director, and some just to act in. And I'm excited about the things that are coming my way right now.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
God, so good to talk to you. Yeah, thanks so much for your time.
So you guys are so sweet. Thank you so much.
And we can't wait to see all the things that you do next. And we look forward to following your career.
Yeah, Allison, Josh, this has been great, you guys. Thank you.
It's definitely.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for subscribing to the blog. Really
I'm excited. You guys send me some recommendations, man. If you have anything top of mind, please email me.
Oh, of course. Definitely will.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, you guys.
So much. Have a good one.
All right, you too.